So, what the fudge is CSPM, or Cloud Security Posture Management? Well, in this video, we're going to dive into exactly what it is, what are its strengths, what are its weaknesses, and where do you deploy it. My name is Mackenzie Jackson, and you are listening to Tool Time by Aikido Security. So as I said, CSPM stands for Cloud Security Posture Management. And it's essentially looking at our cloud environments and determining if there's any security issues in there and giving us the overall kind of posture, security posture of what our cloud environments are. Now, I've done a previous video on something called infrastructure as code scanning, and this is kind of similar in that the infrastructure as code scanning looks through the code that we write to deploy our infrastructure and identifies security issues with it. The difference with CSPM is that CSPM isn't looking at our code, it's looking at our actual runtime environments. Now, this is great and bad. It is great because this is what we actually need to secure. This is our actual environment. It's live. It's real. This is what we need to secure. It's bad in the sense that if we get an alert on our CSPM, well, it means that we have a security threat at the moment, whereas infrastructure as code security scanning can tell us before we deploy it. That's kind of like the big difference. But a lot of the times, they're looking for the same things. So there's a few different tools that you can use. There's something called AWS Prowler, and this is an open source tool that we can use to look at our AWS environments. And this is quite cool. It's usually a CLI tool, and as you can see here, it's actually going to look at our AWS account using its APIs, and it's going to tell us if we have any big security misconfigurations. That's on the open source side. On the commercial side, there's lots of tools. This here is in a tool called Aikido Security, which I work for, by the way. And here you can kind of see the access that we have in different areas. And what I like about this and why I'm showing you is that you can actually see all the things that the CSPM is actually looking for. So all of the rules that it's checking against our accounts. We'll get back to the tools and do more demos in a minute. But first, there's a couple of things to kind of understand about CSPM. What is the CSPM actually just looking for there? What are the vulnerabilities that it's trying to find? Well, there's like a huge tail, so we can't go through all of them. But some of the most common ones are publicly accessible data stores or data buckets. There is endless amounts of news reports about public S3 buckets that have been exposed, and they're literally never ending. Like in 2025, there's 86,000 patient records that were exposed because a health company hadn't put privacy on the bucket in which they were stored in. A big one that it's going to be looking at is your user roles. What type of permissions does your users have, and are they overly permissive? Now, this is actually a big one because a lot of attacks happen because an account is compromised. If that account has lots of access, it can get real squirrely real fast. There could be all kinds of things about network and ingress. So, for example, do you have your firewalls set up correctly? Do you have overly permissive ingress or egress rules? Are you monitoring and auditing all the logs that you have? If you don't have logs turned on or they're not monitored, then this can be a massive risk. Lots about container security, Kubernetes security, all of these types of things. One other advantage of a CSPM tool that they probably all should have if you're going with a vendor is to have some kind of reporting, because a lot of this comes back to compliance. And if you need to, for compliance, if you've got like SOC 2, or if you're dealing with HIPAA or something else, you're probably going to want to have some reports generated. And having a tool that can do that for you is going to save you so much time, trust me. There's typically two ways that tools can deploy, and some use a combination. One is called Agentless, and one is, well, agent. And I don't know what you'd call it. It involves agents. So there's agentless and then not agentless, I guess. What agentless means is that you don't have to deploy a software onto your cloud account. So often how these work is that you deploy something in like a virtual machine on your cloud account and it's monitoring it by itself. Now, this is actually a little bit of a risk, which is why people don't typically like this approach, because you're installing someone else's software that someone else controls into probably what is your most sensitive kind of environment that you have. Agentless, on the other hand, doesn't actually install anything onto your machines. It uses an API. So it kind of authenticates itself into your cloud account, And then it is able to then check using an API what kind of assets that you have, if there's anything publicly available. The downside of going agentless is that the tool really has to understand the inner workings of all of these very, very complex different API systems. So for example, the EC2 API on AWS is extremely different and works in completely different ways, don't ask me why, it just does, than the S3 bucket API. So you have to make sure that the resources you're using are well defined by the tool that you choose to go for. Because it could be that there's a blind spot that you don't understand. So that's something that you need to kind of look at when choosing a tool. If it's agentless, how well does it fit into my infrastructure? Really good CSPMs will fit into everything. So just keep that in mind. So how do all these work? Well, we'll look at two tools. We'll look at an open source tool, Prowler, and then we'll look at Aikido Security. I have my AWS account configured on my machine, and all I need to do is just type in Prowler AWS, and it's going to use the configuration that I have and actually kind of do some scans for me. Our scan has completed. Let's have a look at some of the results that we have. So let's give us here a nice graph. And essentially what it's doing is it's running through a series of different rules that we have. And it can let you know how many of these rules fail and how many of them kind of pass in this case. So here we've kind of got 17 failures, but they're all under kind of low failure rates. So that's probably not so significant. And we can see kind of a lot of them. Here we have CloudTrail. CloudTrail is a logging application. So we're obviously failing in how we're kind of logging our application. Some of the more big ones, we've got critical here in our IAM. So IAM user function. So this probably is that we have over-permissive users in our cloud accounts. In fact, I know that it is. So we have a couple of criticals, some high, some medium, some low. So lots of different issues in kind of the different settings that we have. And we can go through these. And it kind of also gives us a little bit of kind of different frameworks that we have and if we're failing with them. Now, we can look at the results just like this. Obviously, we want to get down to the 0 issues or at least none of these medium or high or critical issues. But we can export this into various different ways as well. Now, the one cool thing about our commercial tools is it actually gives you a whole lot better visibility in what's kind of actually going on and what it's looking for. This here is in a tool called Aikido Security. Here you can see I have a whole bunch of different cloud accounts. So Prowler only works for AWS, but here we've got multiple different ones, but there are other open source tools out there for everything. We can explore these and have a look into it. And it's going to give me all of the policies that are failing in this instance accounts. Hopefully you have a lot less than this, but this is just an idea. And we can see here we have IAM policies. We have virtual machines with open ports. These are the types of things that we're looking for. A cool thing is we can have a look at our assets. And what this does is kind of points out all of the different things that we have in our cloud account. And we've got 87 pages of this. So we've got a lot of assets. What's really cool about our assets is that we can actually do search in these. And we can actually use native language. See, for example, public buckets or data storage or certain instances. I can just type that in with normal language and it will show me those assets that I have, which is a really nifty way of kind of navigating through and understanding your assets in your account. But this is nice is to know what is all mapped out. And it also shows the complexity of cloud environments as well. And we can see here and have a look inside our containers or our virtual machines and have a look if we have any issues in them. Another cool thing in this product, Aikido Security, is that we can actually see all of the different checks that you have. And one of the things, and this is something that you probably want to look for when kind of dealing with it, is that we have our standard checks as well. We also have advanced checks. Now, these can be turned on and off. And the reason why these are advanced is that these may not actually apply to everyone or in every cloud environment. So you can turn these on and off depending on the infrastructure of how you kind of set everything up. And then finally, you have the custom there where you can actually write your custom rules. And these custom rules are actually really cool. This is something that's very new in CSPM. So this is using AI. So I can say, show me all the public buckets, for example. And this here is just going to show me all of the public buckets that I have. And based on this type of policy, which is kind of natural language policies that I have, then I can actually create custom rules based on this. Now, I don't need to write it in some fancy language. I can just literally just write it out, which is super cool. Create custom rules based on that. Be a little bit more complex than this, I'm sure. Well, there you have it. That's our deep dive into CSPM today. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel. We try really hard to create great educational content. So I'd love to see you on the next video. And until then, stay secure, stay safe.